Okay, so hi, Kevin.
Wow.
Wow,
Wow,
Spirit.
Spirit. Oh my goodness. Hello, Debra.
This is our first Wow Spirit. Cheers to you.
Oh my gosh, I made tea. Cheers to you. The,
Nice.
the premiere.
And cheers to all the people watching. Cheers to all the people watching.
All the people watching, all the
Yeah.
people listening.
All
Cheers
the
to
people that have contributed to who and what we are right now in our journeys. I
so
love
much
that
gratitude.
too.
Yes.
We had a kind of a quick sort of message that I sent you earlier,
Yes.
because we have talked about doing this podcast, and I love, of course, saying "Wow, Spirit," because how many times do we go to each other? Wow,
Wow.
like that
It's
was
just,
amazing.
yeah, it's said probably daily, multiple times.
Sent you a message saying, shall we just, I'll introduce a topic, because I think one of the things we spoke about was just authentically moving into each week with really what Spirit presents us.
I love that.
So that I would throw you into something and then you would throw me into something, and we'll just see what happens in that. And so for those of you watching that don't know, my name is Debra Doerksen. I'm a spiritual medium, and I am happy to be here with Kevin.
Debra, this is such a pleasure. I love it how you started with just honoring the people that have got us here and in who we are and in this journey. And I mean, I have to start off with saying that you're a big part of how I got started into this, truly. And so just really honoring you in this moment. And
We miss the roundhouse, don't we?
we do that beautiful roundhouse.
Yeah, we're
It's giving
Diane.
birth, yes, and giving birth to other things in that energy, right? Like it
It was a
literally.
place of giving.
Yes, it really was in so many ways. So it's that. And yes, Diana, definitely honoring her in her part in this for
Yeah,
where I'm at and all of it. So
yeah.
I'm Kevin Lewis, and I am also a spiritual medium. And this is so exciting. And I love this that we're not, because this is the thing that I think that we really want people to feel is the authenticity of it and just being able to jump into it like it's not scripted. We're really allowing, the spirit to move in and to be present. And we really hope that people feel that. And so
Mhm.
I'm excited. And I mean,
Yeah.
excited in a way of I'm curious of what you're going to throw at me, but I'm
Yeah.
seeing that in the most open-hearted way. So, oh my
And I
God.
like what you said. You hope people feel it. I also hope that people
Mhm.
emulate it,
Yeah.
because one of the things that I always talk about. So I teach these series of like kind of workshops or classes called the Divine Self, because why name it anything else? Do you know what I mean? It's about
Yeah.
tapping into the spirit. But people are always shocked that I don't pre-plan what we're going to do. It could happen that the whole thing is given to me by spirit the day before, the morning of, 5 minutes before. It's happened before where I'm going through the day up, waiting for the class at night, and nothing's come yet. And all of a sudden, spirit has me turn a corner and see something, and the whole thing unfolds. And those nights are meant to help people expand their intuitive development, their awareness, their sensitivity, give them a sense of, oh, I saw that, I heard that, I felt that, that was amazing kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that that's when I'm probably one of my main focuses of you and I sharing and talking together, is not just that they're neat stories to listen to, or maybe there's pieces of wisdom that spirit wants to bring forward, but then people go forward in their life to emulate what that is.
And that's it. Going back to wanting people to emulate this, we have to be in the demonstration. So that is to me the demonstration of being in trust.
Yeah.
It really is handing it over and going, okay, like what's going to happen. So
Yeah.
that to me is the trust aspect of that
Yeah.
is really powerful.
So
So
you're going to be over the moon happy because Spirit gave a full out wow for our first wow podcast. And you're going to be so blown away.
I love it.
Last night, I said, okay, Kevin and I are going forward to, record the podcast tomorrow. Spirit, bring something forward that we could start with. Do you know what I mean? Give us a good start. So I woke up this morning not thinking of that. I kind of said that as I went to bed last night. So I had 2 sessions today. So I enter into my first session today with a woman named Debra. Okay. So she's Debra and I'm Debra. And her mother came through, said her name, Evelyn, the whole bit. I mean, it was such a jaw-dropping session that I was like, what is happening, Debra? Like her mother is amazing. She says, well, I've seen you before. This is the horrible part. I next to never remember
Oh,
a person, which is like,
yes.
I don't know, I go into the stratosphere or something when I'm working. But anyway, so she said, I've seen you before. And she said, you said the same thing about my mother last time. And you know, Kevin, how some spirits, the connection is phenomenal, and
Yeah.
some spirits, the connection is okay, or it's fine. And others, do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like
Yes.
there's the energy lag.
Truth. Mhm.
So I said, well, your mom is just absolutely remarkable. And then I said, look, I said, your mom's making me so aware of the topic actually that I want to talk about in our podcast tonight. So can I bring up you and your mom and use you, as an example about, so here's the topic, I'm going to pitch it to you, is when you're in communication with spirit
Yeah.
and it's wonderful, or it's
Yeah.
is it the client, the person who's sitting, their energy? Is it
Mm.
the spirit's ability to communicate or not communicate? Or is it the state or the space that the medium is in? And we've had this conversation
I know.
before, and many other mediums have had this conversation before. And
Yeah.
I have my ideas about it, and you have your take on it. And we'll have a conversation about that. However,
But yeah.
as we went into the session, the mother started talking about her other children, the son, who's named Kevin.
Um,
Spirit gave me
love it.
when I asked
Nice.
something
Mm.
tonight. A Debra
Oh,
spelt my way. I know, I just said the hummingbird.
no, a bird just hit the window.
It hit the window.
It hit the window. Is that a part of your reading? No, the bird's okay. Bird's okay for sure.
But is it Debra
Yeah.
and Kevin?
Wow.
Right after I said to her
Stop
that
it.
I wanted to do, I'm like, Spirit, thank you so much. Like, so that was the wow. So I wanted to give you that.
Wow, spirit.
Yeah. Now, so there's another thing I want to talk about, Evelyn, later at the
Yeah.
end. So there we are. Here we
Yes.
are. There's the topic, Kevin. How much does the strength of communication in a session matter, or is affected by the person who's receiving the reading, or we'll call it the reading
Yeah.
or the communication, the spirit themselves or the medium?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I mean, I want to start with the spirit side of things.
Okay.
And so where I go with that, and this is what I don't know if I've shared this with you, but it's kind of funny. In my mind, I feel like they're preparing as we kind of are. So as mediums, we go through our stuff, we're doing our things, we're getting grounded, we're getting into the space to be into that communication. We're raising our vibration, we're stepping into that space. And I feel like spirit does the same on the spirit side. Well, they're doing kind of like their dress rehearsal. I envision them kind of all going like, okay, this, and we're going to practice this and this and that. And so I think that one part of it is it perfect? Perhaps, but it also could be that sometimes on that side, it might be the first time they're in a communication. So I think to it like, well, maybe this is new to them, in some aspect. So I think when I think of myself, when I step into a reading, I might have various different things happen in the day that put me into a different, mood in the moment or kind of feeling. So I think where I'm at really can influence it. And I don't always feel the same in every single time I go into a reading. And then there's the sitter, the person that's getting the communication. Where are they at? Where are they in their vibration? So I think in part, all of those parts can contribute to the overall essence of the communication. So I think it's because it's never, I mean, that's the thing. We kind of go like, what is it that we can do in order to get the reading to be those wow, where the evidence is flowing, the communication is flowing, the sitter is in feeling the essence of their loved one, really in that feeling. So I think that to me, I think it's a combination, and I wouldn't put blame to it. It's not that, but in the recognition, I think all the parts make a difference in what comes through. And I'm open to it being like, maybe something that's totally different. But this is the thing. I remember going into readings and being like, I kind of have my list, in some of the training and some of the approach, and people just work, so differently through the communication, that I would sometimes go into this, not demand, let me say this gently, request of tell me this, tell me this, tell me this, because you and I both work through the evidence. We want to bring through the evidence to make sure that we have the right link with the right spirit, so that the sitter can understand it. And then I thought one time, I'm like, who am I to try and like navigate what that looks like? Because if I just trust in what needs to come through will come through, and that I'm the right, medium to provide the information to the sitter, then just be in that. So it's interesting. I don't know if that fully answered the question, but I think it's a start to, and that's the thing about me. This about me. Sometimes I kind of discover as I go, even about myself, and things that I've been doing it for a long time, but then there's still that discovery when you get asked the question of the process. But what do you think about that? What about you?
There are so many different variables.
Mm.
There's one thing though, after 15 years of constant mediumship, that I am certain of, that the spirit is always there.
Yeah.
I'm certain of that. So when I hear people say, my loved one's not there, or they're stuck and can't communicate, or they haven't crossed over properly to the other side, or any of those other sort of what I would say are excuses for not making connection to the spirit, I don't care for that. Only because I am certain at this point, and yes, I could be wrong, but I believe that the spirit is there.
Yeah.
Whether the communication can be made or not, that's the part that's the question, right? I have no doubt that the auntie, the mother, the father, the sister, the brother, the child are in their beautiful radiant energy, are all around and aware of, like you said, as we're preparing, they're preparing, and sometimes days or weeks ahead. There's been so many synchronicities over the years, where I know that I've been spoken to by somebody's spirit 3 days before they even come to see me, and it uncovers itself in that session. So I believe the spirit is always attentive in there. So whether the connection is made or not, it is not a question of their attendance, but it is a question of communication. And so sometimes I say, it's like if you walked into a party and there's 100 people in the room. And in that room, you might immediately see some people that are familiar to you, and it's an easy conversation. And maybe that's 2 or 3 people. And then you might meet some people that you really resonate with, and you want to have like dinner with them again to deepen the conversation more. And then there might be some people you just kind of give a wink and a nod to. That was a really weird wink. And
now, those of you listening, it was kind of weird.
It was.
It was a bit weird. Might there something in your eye?
I nodded sideways and then acted like I had a bug in my eye. I do very poorly picking somebody up, I'm sure. So there'd be this wink and a nod and an acknowledgement, and then maybe 80 of the people you just wouldn't have the opportunity to communicate with. So they're all in the room, but the level of communication may be different. And so some people say that the sitter, what we call the sitter, the client, the one that's listening to the medium or to the person who's doing that sort of transmission, we might say that their energy is in the way.
Mm.
However, I have had the most skeptical people, big burly men, arms crossed, I don't believe this BS, bawling because their dad is just described basically their life to them and told them what they ate for breakfast yesterday. And do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
um, and and so this energy did not impede the connection with the spirit at all. I've had people so open to receiving a message,
Mm.
fully on board with the idea of spirit communication, and a little bit of like a slodgy, molassesy kind of roller coaster. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then how much does the person sitting have the responsibility in energy that they bring to the table? Still, it's a question mark, but I'm just being truthful about that attendance. So I also don't believe that the sitter themselves is the only one that can wield whether a session goes well or not. So if you're sitting with the medium and the medium says, well, you approached this all wrong and that's why I can't make connection, I'm sorry, I don't buy it. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Could a sitter's energy funk things up a bit? For sure, I think that it could.
Yeah.
Do I think that a medium should be able to get around that? For sure, I think they
Yeah.
technically should be able to, but maybe some days that's not possible.
Yeah.
So I think it does come down to how well the medium themselves has learned to listen
Yeah.
and really get themselves out of the way, and whether the spirit can figure out how to communicate with that medium.
Mhm.
And I always envision them like this, they're looking at me in the room and going, okay, I really want to what do I show her to make her say this? Or
Right.
can she hear me? Okay, I'm
Yeah.
going to try to get her to hear me. Oh, I just heard that. Do you know what I mean? So I think that their energy is going, okay, here's this woman, like this little amoeba of energy, and I've got to try to bring my energy close and sort of do this dance around her. How can you
How can we get her to
for those listening, I'm like, I feel like a jellyfish in the ocean. Do you know what I mean? Sort of like that undulating sort of movement of energy in
Yeah.
and out. And so some seem to be such remarkable communicators. So I think a lot has to do with the spirit's ability
Yeah.
and pairing up with the medium's ability.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I want to go back. I love the way that you separated um, the presence of the spirit and then the communication, which are two very different things. And that's just it. We would be contradicting ourselves if we didn't say that we know the spirit's always present. That's what we're doing. That's what we're proving is, the afterlife. And so in that, the continuation of life, of course, the spirit's always present right here, right now. So in that, yes, the communication can look so very different. I know it made me think of one of the things that can be, and this is, like you said, to the point about the experience and what we can handle. Because if you have someone who is really, let's just say, for example, that's really, they're only wanting to hear from one person and one person only, and they want to hear certain things specifically. And unless they say this, and this, they're not going to listen. So I'm actually saying that from actual experience where it's like, okay, but that's just it. I guess there's those moments where, yes, our attention is, to the spirit, but it's also the energy of the person that we're either in the room with or that we're on the Zoom link with, and in that you can sense their energy as well. So yeah, there's sometimes conversations of navigating that, and I think it comes through the experience of doing so many readings. But how wonderful to know that the spirit is always present.
Yeah, and to the point that you made earlier about approach and that laundry list of things,
Right.
you know that I always say I'm the most skeptical medium. It's why
Yeah.
I'm always saying to spirit, like sometimes the spirit will share something with me. I'll say, "Well, I'm not going to say that to your loved one until you tell me a
Yeah.
couple of things that they actually can say are true and specific about you or them or the
Mm.
situation." Do you know what I mean? So I'm always I what do I say? I'm always double checking myself. Like if I
Yeah.
say to spirit, "Did I get that right for you?" If I got that right for you, then tell me something else that is not even questionable, that the client I have, the loved one I have sitting in front of me can understand and say, "Absolutely, that happened. That's true." Do you know what I mean? Too, and
Yeah.
not vague. I mean specific.
Yeah. And
That's
that
mhm.
no, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. The to that laundry list of things. The thing is, in a session, I could have a man named Robert, who is a father, come forward and say, I'm the father.
Mm.
My name is Robert, right? So he could say that. I could suddenly feel right down where my prostate doesn't exist, but technically would. And I might feel a spreading there of cancer. So I might say, "Do you understand the cancer that I'm feeling down, like near my prostate?" "Yes, my father, that is my father, Robert. He died of prostate cancer." And then Robert might stop communicating.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, there's this woman who's touching my body. Oh, here, okay, I'm going to tell you about Evelyn. Okay, so
Oh,
this is the other thing. So Evelyn is the mother from earlier that I told you.
right.
So the father in that session um uh uh presented no, pardon me, the in a session second session after that, the father just walked in, just like I said, separate from Evelyn's session.
Mhm.
My next client, the father walked in, I'm the father, blah blah blah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But with Evelyn, all of a sudden I felt hands on my body. I didn't even know it was a mother yet. I felt hands on my body and this calming. And I felt like these hands on my body were taking me to this euphoric, heavenly state where I felt
Mm.
comforted and loved in a way that was so overwhelming. I could hardly contain it. I could
Oh.
hardly put words to it, but I kept feeling my arm being touched, down my arm, my hand being held. I
Mm.
felt a hand being placed on my chest. And so I said, Your mother must be passed because I think this is a mother that's talking to me about this." And Deborah was like, "Yes, she has." And I said, "Well," so I didn't start off by saying her name was Evelyn. That was the last thing her mother told me.
Oh.
But it started with this hand thing. So if I'm focused on a laundry list of I want the name or the job they did or whatever, I would have missed this profound thing. What Evelyn was saying was that because she said she was unconscious for a couple of days or she wasn't communicating. And I said there was an Alzheimer's dementia. And she said, "Yeah, that's what my mom had." But what Evelyn was saying was that when her daughter was by her bedside and she
Mm.
was touching her, the level of comfort and reassurance and ease and peace that her daughter was giving her just by touching her like that made the transition between this world and her move into heaven felt very much the same, like as if her daughter's hands were bringing heaven closer to her.
Yes. Oh my
Isn't that
well, that's the essence of the communication is to feel the presence of her of
beautiful?
course, she felt her mother. I'll go out on a limb. Of course, she felt the presence of her mother just this like, in that moment,
Yeah.
and that is, to me, more important than
Mhm.
the list of all the other things to feel that. Was there this is so
And
random.
they can all be there. All those things can be there,
Yes.
all of those valid because right after that, I was going, "Oh," and my body was suddenly doing this, like I'm moving back and forth for you, those of you that are listening. And I said, I feel like I'm on a bike. Something's really important about a bike. I don't know if somebody's getting a bike or just riding a bike." She goes, "Deborah, after this session, I'm going to the bike shop with my daughter to buy a new bike." So,
Oh, man.
so there's the right, there's
Wow.
the concrete,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
but then there's that movement of emotion. So to your point, like you said before, is that the way that spirit enters in, we have to be so lovingly respectful of
Mm,
the way that they want to present themselves, or the way that they've figured out how to bring their energy and their essence into the session to start off. So,
yeah,
yes, there's things that I think as mediums, it has to be a demonstration of mediumship, which means that things can't be general and they have to be validated
yeah,
to some significant degree.
yeah,
That can be very difficult for people. Everybody has their own measurement or weight to that.
yeah.
But as far as the receiving of the spirit and how the communication goes, yes, I think there are things that we need to hear, but I think we have to be open to not demanding them and saying, "Come to me, come closer, share
Right?
with me in the way that you would share."
Yeah. Like, what would you like to share with me? I want to go back to a question that I have that came up when you were sharing one, but I just have to round it because this
Yeah.
just dropped in. This literally just dropped in.
Yeah.
Was there a mention of a feather in one of your readings?
Not today.
Okay, that's interesting because a little feather, like literally, and for those that will have to trust this in this, but a little feather just flew. I think you can see it. There we
Yeah,
go.
I can.
Um, into the thing, and they said to stop there.
Okay,
Perhaps.
but
Oh,
Deborah does know that because I asked her permission
yep.
that we were gonna be talking about
Oh,
her
okay.
session, her mother, in today's thing. So we'll just leave that for Deborah after to.
I love that.
Yes.
Please do. Yeah, because I do actually feel it is. It is to. And she was your first reading.
Oh, geez. I
Was
think so.
she?
Yeah.
Okay, I feel like it was. I want to go back to that, just the point about you saying about, because I loved it, and it brought up for me just the energy of discernment in, and I know where you sit on this, and I love it, but I would love for you to share around the discernment. So when you started to feel, I think how you said it was like, you were feeling a certain way about it, and you were like, okay, spirit, if I'm supposed to say that, you need to give me something that's really a definite yes, that's super specific before I'm going to say that. Can you share what's behind that for you? Meaning, let me just ask you this way:
Mhm.
do you think that everything that you get should be shared, or do you think that when you sit
No.
with a client, do you want to know everything?
Such a good question. I will put myself out there as saying, I think it's an irresponsible thing to say.
Yeah,
I think it's an irresponsible thing to say when you are holding the hearts and the minds and the spirit of not only those in spirit, but the person who's sitting in front of you is grieving
yeah,
to varying degrees. You do not know the degree to which they're grieving. You do not know their mental health state. And do I edit? Yes,
mm,
like any decent and responsible therapist does. And we are not therapists, but I
mm,
think that we should hold the same value structure and the same kind of respect for what we don't know.
mhm,
Now I'm not talking about psychic reading. I'm talking about mediumship, and that
yeah,
because I don't come as a psychic reader. Nobody comes to me for psychic readings. I am not looking into your future. I am not talking about your, relationships. I'm purely talking about making connections to loved ones in spirit. So, so no, for myself, it's not
mhm,
a question I would ask if I feel like something is incredibly sensitive. So let me say I have felt every dynamic of human experience that can be felt, from brutalizing, torturous murder to assaults of all different kinds, to family dynamics
mm,
of abandonment, pain, trauma, abuse, those kinds of things. I would never want to lead somebody into a place that I wasn't certain that they were prepared, that they had a life structure around them that could support anything that they needed help with after to
right,
navigate, right? So there is no way. I hope, I seriously, I put my hand up. I hope to God that it would ever come out of my mouth that I am telling someone something that they don't already know
Right.
about
Mhm.
themselves.
Mhm.
So I'm not going to say, oh, your father's here and he's apologizing for abusing you when you were a child. No, that's
Right.
a hard no. If a
Yeah.
father is coming forward and showing me an apology and that he was abusive, I would change my words.
Yeah.
So I would say, father is here. There's a feeling that there was difficulties with him. Do you understand that? Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
so you're gauging where the person sitting with you is at. They're very sensitive subjects. People are coming to you to communicate with family, friends, those kinds of things. We're just, again, talking about mediumship here, meaning
Yeah.
being the medium between a loved one in spirit and the person that is sitting in front of you. So that's a hard no for me
Yeah.
on you want to hear everything. No, I have a responsibility to be
Mhm.
responsible in the work that spirit's called me to.
Mhm.
That's how I feel.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
I feel the same. That's why I asked you. I mean, in all fairness, we've had this conversation, and that's exactly how I feel. When I hear it, I guess it makes the hair on the back of my neck go up in that, and I start to feel uncomfortable in lots of readings where it's like I know that I need to be really, really acutely aware of the words that I'm using. So in it,
Yep.
I mean the edit, and
Mhm.
it's like you said, I like that where it's not telling them something that they don't already know. Like
Mhm.
it's so important. So
And also too working with the spirit. So I might say I might have a spirit that comes forward and actually it leads to a whole nother conversation, but
oh
I might have a spirit come forward that can you hear that siren going by? Oh,
no
good.
no.
I might have a spirit come forward that's starting to talk about those things, and I might say to them, okay, I already have the validation that it was a difficult conversation. Or a difficult relationship. We
Mm,
don't really need to go down that road, do we? And if they say yes, that there is something specific that they're kind of needing to anchor to, I will say, then you better tell me when. And so then they'll say when they were 3, when they were 5, when
mm,
they were 10, when they were 14. So I might go as far as to be specific with them about the time that the father is referencing and then leave it at that. But then I'll say, why are you here? What is it that you're here for? What is the message that you're wanting to bring forward? We're
mm.
not going to rehash the past or go into the pain of that here. You've made your acknowledgement of the time frame that you're talking about, and that you're sorry for the very complicated energy that you brought across in that. But what is it that you'd like us to know now, right?
Mm,
I'm also working with the spirit, not just with the client that's sitting. So I don't know, I just think that
mm.
it's respectful and kind and responsible. It's not to say that we don't make errors and mistakes, everybody does, but I think that that consciousness has to be there. People are hurting.
Yes.
Kevin,
Oh,
that
oh
in
my
really
gosh.
big ways. So
Mhm.
I think even too, as a medium, I think you should have a very big library of resources. I think you should have contacts and connections to therapists, counselors, doctors. I think that you should have, um, here I'm shoulding, but I think that it's wise
Mhm.
to have information to pass on to your clients to say, if there's any aspect of this you're struggling with afterwards, here's some really great books to read, here's some really good people that you could see, here's places that you could reach out. Do you know what I mean? So that you're kind of making it a very well-rounded sort of experience.
And with that, I think that spirit, trusting and knowing in their intelligence around it, that you, for example, would be perfect for these people to see you. You know what I mean? And so your own abilities and your own resources and your own, library of information, they're aware of that. So it's like, I like to say, like, just bring me the people that are aligned for me, that I'm going to best, provide them the experience that
Yep,
is within my limited
for sure.
vocabulary, intelligence, resources, all of that. But I love that, having a repertoire of support that is outside of, because mediumship, one thing that it does not do is replace all of the it doesn't necessarily, for some people even take away any of the grief, so there's just, we're a part of it, and a beautiful part of it. But there's often other support that people need beyond, just a medium. But
I do. I think it's another wonderful modality for healing.
yeah,
But it does not take the place. We're not grief
no,
counselors or there. I mean,
right.
I do have doctors and therapists and psychiatrists, psychologists that send
Yeah.
their clients to me because of the transformation aspect of what happens, for the client when they've sat and in a beautiful kind of warm session of mediumship. Again, we're not talking about psychic work, we're talking about the aspect of
Right.
mediumship where that love and that tender care is present. One therapist said to me, when your clients come back from me, she said they're open in a way that they weren't before.
Oh, wow.
And so I think sometimes what's gained is hope.
Mm.
And there's a wonderful woman named Uni in Norway who I've made recent contact with, and she's a connection specialist. So she's a speaker, like a TED Talk speaker on connection. And her and I relate very well in that way, because I've always said, I think what people are seeking is not just love, what they're at the deepest core of themselves are looking for connection.
Mm.
And so think about mediumship and think about what mediumship
Right.
does. It makes incredible connections. When it's done well, it makes incredible connections. And I think that feeds the soul.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
So glad we did this. And look, Spirit gave us, wow, Spirit. They gave us the big wow today with the Debra
That's
and
nice.
Kevin to start the day off. Evelyn,
Fun.
shout out to Evelyn.
Shout out. Aw.
Thank you so much for what you gave to start this first podcast with. And again, one of the things she did want me to reiterate was when your loved one is leaving this world
Mm.
and you get the opportunity to be with them in a hospital room or at home, don't feel afraid to put your hands on
Aw.
and touch them and
Mm.
bridge that space between heaven and earth for them, Yeah.
Wow. Thank you, Debra. Thank you, Evelyn. And thank you,
Thank
Debra.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Debra and Kevin too.
So beautiful. Well, this was lovely.
See you next week.
See you next week.